out of executive session and let the record show that there were no votes taken during executive session and the minutes be sealed.
Motion by Council Yazdak, however, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Walensky.
We're coming out and,
Reserving
yeah, let the record show that we reserve the right to go back into executive session if need be later in the meeting. That's part of the motion.
Motion,
I'll withdraw the original motion.
Second.
I make a motion, we come out of executive session, that we reserve the right to go back into executive session if required or need be by majority vote of the council, and that the executive session that just ended, that the record show that there were no votes taken and that the minutes be sealed.
motion by Councilor Yazdak,
Second.
second by Councilor Walensky. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Mr. McGee? Yazdak?
Yes.
Mr. Valensky?
Yes.
Mr. Flaherty?
Yes. I do want to announce that there are a number of items on the agenda remaining that we are not likely to get to. For those that don't understand, we have a 10 p.m. curfew. We need to have a unanimous vote to extend. We have only done that in typically 15-minute increments. So it's reality. So I just want to make that known for folks who have been sitting here waiting patiently, and I apologize if you have been waiting here for an item. It's not going to be substituted. The next item on the agenda is discussion by council, vote, or other action by Nicholson and Associates regarding tax abatements in Tax Assessor's Department. We have it listed for two sub-items: discussion by council, vote, or other action on explanation of tax abatements, and discussion by council, vote, or other action on year-end financials. And so I just want to do a quick tee-up of this, starting off by saying that I recognize fully that this is a very charged issue. And there's a whole host of things that I would like to discuss about process, how we got to where we are. I don't want to take the time away from Mr. Nicholson in presenting his findings. There is not a written report that's going to be distributed this evening. We can talk about that and why that is. I think there's good reasons for it, but we're going to hear a presentation. The council is intending to listen. I don't know how far we will get, and so I want to use every minute of available time for the council to be able to hear Mr. Nicholson's findings and recommendations, and then we can talk about next steps. Mr. Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. My name is Richard Nicholson. I'm with Nicholson Associates, and we've been engaged in part to look at the 2013 abatements and the reasons behind the 2013 abatements and what may have caused such a late notice of such abatements. I do realize the anxiety associated with this issue. It's taken us some time to delve into the issues. There's much that we have uncovered, and I need to be careful as some of the things that we have addressed and uncovered make concern issues of litigation, and that should remain in executive session for my advice and advice of the city solicitor. As a preface to the oral presentation this evening regarding the interim report regarding the 2013 abatement, it's important to note at the outset of this report that we have detected no findings of willful or nefarious activity. If we had, we would have brought it immediately to the attention of the council. However, what we have noted, and we did find, negligence, which may be defined as carelessness, laxity, and abandonment of responsibility. We know negligence at all levels, starting with the Board of Assessment Review, and whether or not the council should have voted on abatements of prior year, down through the administration, particularly the finance department, the finance director, and your tax assessor, or assessors. We conducted our review of the 2013 abatements that were subject to council consideration on June 2014, and we reviewed individual abatements and ascertained whether or not proper procedures were followed pursuant to town charter, ordinance, and Rhode Island general law. The first important note is our finding that the Board of Assessment Review cannot meet on a regular basis. In fact, the Board of Assessment Review is required to post an agenda each and every time it meets. And we could not find a record of it going back as far as 2007. The proper procedure is that when a taxpayer wishes an abatement, the taxpayer fills out the proper application as prescribed by Rhode law within the relevant timeframes. The tax assessor then has the opportunity to say yes or no. Presuming that the tax assessor says yes, I agree with the abatement, it goes before the Board of Review. And the Board of Review, after consideration, will make its recommendation. If the abatement is granted, it then goes before the council for its consideration. Had the process been followed, we probably would not be here today. But the process, in part, was not followed. Well, entirely had not been followed. The abatements that we looked at total $752,000. Report's going far. Less supplemental billings of $103,000 for a net of approximately $649,145. We broke these out into 8 major categories. And if you want to quantify how many abatements, we're looking at roughly 306 items, which are considerable. Of the 8 items, we looked at duplicate billings, of which there were 19 abatements, totaling $234,386. Double billing should be abated. We looked at interstate trucking and tax exemptions. 15 abatements in total, totaling $171,736. That's $406,000 in total now out of the net $650. We have overvalued real estate, 55 abatements, totaling $136,000. And then the next largest category, what we refer to as miscellaneous, but it includes tangible taxes on businesses that have gone out of business, billing to the wrong account, 33 abatements in total, amounting to $96,549. The remaining 4 items, one being trailers, campers, and buses, 72 abatements totaling $76,000 change. Senior exemptions, veteran exemptions, exemptions for the blind, 48 abatements totaling $20,938. VBC errors, Vehicle Valuation Commission errors, 41 abatements totaling $10,946, and DMV errors totaling $6,430. There were a lot of documentation issues that we noted. There were notes in the system regarding many of these abatements, but we had a difficult time finding a lot of the documentation, whether it's the appeal form or paperwork supporting the decision of the assessor to abate. Now, that's not to say that 20 to 25% lack documentation. And again, if it went before the Board of Assessment Review, the Board of Assessment Review would have had to rely on a record to make its recommendation. Now, I think part of the breakdown in the process, other than the Board of Assessment Review not meeting, is the volume that the then assessor had to consider. It was just a monumental task to process all these abatements. Overwhelming, perhaps. At the beginning of the tax roll, the one that was abated, if you will, the roll was certified by the prior assessor. When a tax assessor certifies a roll, the certifier, the assessor verifies the accuracy, validates the system before locking the system. There are basic steps that could have been taken to avoid an erroneous tax roll, like the double billing. When you're dealing with $234,000, when you look, and maybe to explain the process, here you have the Northeast Valuation Program database, which is Patriot. You look at the tax roll at the end of, in total, just in total, you compare it to the prior year roll. Mr. Yazbek mentioned earlier, valuation, they'll say it really doesn't change all that much, unless you have a new plat development, new subdivision, and the like. But for the most part, materially, it's still there in check. In our opinion, even the basics weren't even attempted before the roll was certified. So we ended up with an erroneous tax roll that required a lot of work. What we do know, and most towns follow, is when the tax roll is certified, a hard copy is printed. Why? Because it's easy to pick up a printed tax roll, it's part of your fixed record, and it allows your tax assessor and tax collector, frankly, to go back and look at the actual bill. The tax roll was never printed. More concerning is that Opal, at the end, the Opal system, which is your billing system, was not locked. The system you can lock. Once you certify the roll, you can lock it. The system was not locked. Which means that anyone can go into the system after the fact and change the tax roll. That's for confusion, particularly when you look at the lack of internal controls and lack of check and balances within the tax assessment department. We also noted material weakness in the user password protection arena. People using the same password, accessing the systems. Audit trail. These systems have something, have a program, a feature called audit trail, where if everyone had their own password, you'd be able to see how what changes when. Audit trail wasn't turned on. Now that said, audit trail is on now. This, the new tax roll that was recently certified is locked. So we're being told. And so on a go-forward basis, we shouldn't have some of the issues concerning who's responsible and who's accountable when changes are made in the tax roll. Give you another example of the breakdown in internal controls and reporting function. The town of North Smithfield doesn't record accounts receivable, tax accounts receivable, when bills go up. You know, Mr. Osbeck's an accountant, when a bill goes out, you debit accounts receivable and you credit tax revenue. This is a major internal control weakness. What happens is, when a taxpayer pays their bill, cash comes in and the account's credited. Said differently, cash is debited and the receivable that should have been there, or I should say, cash is debited and tax revenue is then credited at that point in time. It's amazing that the town doesn't have an aging accounts receivable report at the end of each month to reflect on, see what accounts are delinquent and how it's aging. Your prior orders, what they would do is they would take your prior AR balance for the financial statements, add the new tax roll, less what was collected, and that would be your ending AR balance. And that's not the way accounts receivable should be maintained. And meeting with your current auditors, they agreed with our position that this is a material internal control weakness. One thing that concerned us a lot, and one reason why we opened up our store dating back in 2005. Early on, we were provided with a schedule showing that the abatements, on average, dating back to 2005, were approximately $100,000. So $100,000 per year on average, which at first blush made a whole lot of sense to us, particularly with your audited financials, as the reserve for doubtful accounts was $100,000. When we dug into the system, we noted on average since 2005, it's not $100,000 a year. It's closer to $322,000 a year. To shed more light on that, the $100,000 a year is the amount that the town council approved for abatements per your minutes. So that tells me that there is an additional $222,000 a year that you have no knowledge of. It gets abated in the system, you don't know about it, and your prior orders didn't pick it up, and they should have. There's a lot more I can say. Candidly, it concerns me when I talk about third-party vendors. All of our findings will be delineated in our final report. A lot of the findings we have will be subsequent discussion as to what the town has for recourse. And I need to be very careful at this juncture not to go down a path that deserves discussion in executive session, as it will compromise the council in its position regarding how it may recoup some of these the financial consequences associated with negligence. Something that I would like to talk about, and it's more the organizational behavior of the tax assessor department, for that matter, the finance function. The finance director and your tax assessor and tax collector work out of 2 different buildings. They should not. They should be in the same building. The finance director should know at all times where the staff are, what they're working on, have prescribed list of items that need to be completed on any given week or month. And it needs to be that accountability. What we found is the tax assessor and the finance director pointing fingers at each other. It's a breakdown. It's a breakdown in oversight. It's a breakdown of the organizational environment. I do have grave concerns regarding qualifications. I will say that it's not easy hiring people, particularly qualified people, for positions in finance. We have looked at personnel records, and many of the records are sparse. We've requested copies of resumes. Again, to ascertain whether certain individuals are capable or have the qualifications to do the job that they've been hired to do. And one of our recommendations, and we have a whole list of recommendations that will be coming out, is when the town hires a person, particularly in the finance function, that's where we're focusing on, that a personnel commission or some body be convened to vet applicants, to ask the relevant questions, to ensure that that person who is about to be hired have the requisite skill sets to do the job. Compensation, candidly, of these individuals, that's a concern of mine. It's hard to get good qualified people if you don't offer a competitive pay rate. Training. Evaluations. These things need to be an ongoing mantra in the finance department, which doesn't exist. At this juncture, we are waiting for some additional information. A lot of the information we requested started to flow in the last week or so, which is good for us, because we are welcoming the opportunity to wrap up this report. We have put in well over our estimated hours, but we feel that we need to bring this to a conclusion where we're giving the town council and the taxpayers of this town a comprehensive report. So not only do they know why this happened, but what things, what initiatives, what procedures and protocols they can put in place so to avoid this problem going forward. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to.
Just for clarification, I believe I heard you say that this, your research went back to as far as 2005?
Correct.
Mr. President,
Mr. Zelinski.
we're currently at 9:59. I'd like to make a motion that we extend this meeting to 10:30.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Zelinski, second by Councilor Yazbak. Is there, I'll just say that we've been doing 15 minutes, and that's what I'm prepared to do as well.
Mr. President, if we go a half an hour, we would not have to reconvene, we would not have to readdress it. I guess my motion would cover, if we go in a half an hour, when we were done to convene in 15 minutes, that's a wonderful thing.
I think that we'll tend to fill the time that's allotted, as we usually do, and so if we need to do another motion, we can do another motion, but I'll take a roll call vote on the motion that's on the floor.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Yazbek?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Larry?
No. I'd make a motion that we extend to 10:15.
I think the motion's out of order, Mark. I think the extension is, when somebody agrees not to extend, we're done.
Well,
No.
no, I think we can,
We've done to 15.
I hope so.
okay,
You all right with it?
yeah, I'm okay.
Okay.
Okay, did you
I
make that
I
motion?
motioned,
I'll second.
seconded by Councilor Zelinski. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Yazbek?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Larry?
Yes, motion carries. So, obviously, we're not going to get too far, whether we go for 15 minutes tonight or we go for half an hour. What I'd like to focus on is what our next steps are, getting the written report, how that's transmitted, and whether we need to review what the original agreed upon procedures were, maybe not. It sounds like you've already covered it. So could you just elaborate on?
Sure.
on-
Mr. President, if I may, could I ask some clarifying questions so we don't get into something else? If we're gonna move on to where we go from here, I'm still trying to understand how we got to this point. So I'd like to ask some questions about the testimony that Mr. Nicholson gave, if I could.
Well, I maybe answer this question in 30 seconds. Procedurally, we anticipate, based on the information we received in the last week or so, and from your current auditors who have been helpful in providing information from your prior auditors. We hope to wrap up a draft of this report for council consideration in the next 2 weeks.
That's all we
Now,
have.
And as part of the agreed upon procedures, the council may decide that we expand our scope into a particular area. And that's kind of the essence of agreed upon procedures. Here's our report, here are the things that we agreed to do. And the council candidly, under the engagement, flat fee, may require us to do a little more drilling, a little more work, and expand some of our efforts. So we're looking at about 2 weeks to take what we have and put it in what we think would be a draft of our final report, subject to expanding the scope.
Just to put it in context too, and I know we've discussed this a number of times, or not discussed it, but we've at least exchanged information about it. This council has 2 more meetings to go. One on November 3rd and one on November 17th. There's some folks who are here who are going to be taking some of these seats, so I'm glad that they're here to hear this. But I'm trying to get a sense as to what kind of closure do you think that this council can bring to this issue before our term expires, which the last meeting is tentatively scheduled for, or it is scheduled for November 17th.
I would welcome the opportunity to be before the council for next meeting and talk about some of our specific recommendations. Whether it's to, on a go-forward basis, convene a personnel commission to vet certain positions. I understand that pursuant to your town charter, certain positions cannot be terminated at will. You need to have cause, and that cause has to be willful conduct at some level. Willful is the standard. And that person needs to be charged and afford the opportunity to be heard before the council. With that said, my recommendation, whomever the town administrator is, the positions of finance, department be considered through a personnel commission, have all the applicants apply and vetted as a new hire, which is what will happen if a new town administrator is elected, or should the town administrator be re-elected, she will have that opportunity to appoint or not appoint under the charter. But with that said, applicants should be vetted.
I also would just like to make sure that before we adjourn for the evening, we did have two sub-items on this agenda item, which is one we're discussing right now, which I expect we'll continue to discuss. We also have discussion by council on year-end financials. I know that goes hand in hand with this report, and I know that a lot of people are eager to know, so what is the impact of all this? I mean, it's a complicated, yeah, it's a very complicated problem that we have. I think it's being dealt with, but I think that to not to be able to leave this evening having some understanding of the order of magnitude and what that means, because there's all sorts of conjecture about what it means, and I just think that should be briefed before we adjourn in 10 minutes.
We've had some preliminary discussions with your current auditors. We have noted that it appears relevant to the last tax roll that we had an influx of abatements of approximately, or is the answer to that, 190,000? Yes. $174,000. Now, only a few months have gone by, and there is some concern, as I stand here today, that number could just grow. I can say that the abatements that were presented to this council in June, and the representation made by the tax assessor at the time, saying that a lot of them problems were fixed. That is, exemptions that should have carried through but were billed erroneously had been corrected. Whether senior, blind, interstate trucking, we didn't see a lot of those corrections fixed. Which obviously raises concern as I stand here tonight. With that said, we've had a consultant working for the town, and he believes, Alan believes that he may have made those corrections, to be determined. But the fact that 174,000, give or take, has come through so far concerns me. It concerns your auditors. Your auditors are going to expand, they've already decided to expand their scope, do more substantive testing. So when they do issue your financial statements, it is going to be financials that fairly represent the financial condition of this town. I have concerns about your prior year financial strength. So in conjunction with your auditors, I think when you get your final audited numbers, I think I think we'll be able to rely on them as a plan.
Other questions?
Yeah, I have a number of questions if I may, Mr. President. Mr. Nicholson, you mentioned that there was some things that were delaying you. About a week ago, was some items that hadn't been provided by the administration. It also was some items that hadn't been provided by the prior accountant. Are you saying now that you've gotten the information that you've requested since the last detail in an email about a week ago from the administration, and you've gotten them from the prior account, or the current accountant has gotten them from the prior accountant and is forwarding them to you? What's the current status of, do you have enough to finish? Because you said you want to come back here November 3rd with the final report. Do we have enough to finish so that you will get to the final report? Because I understand this is what's delayed us to here.
The answer is yes. And just so the council is aware, how we approached this engagement in part is when we asked for certain information, we did it in a context of negative confirmation versus affirmative confirmation. Rather, to say differently, what we asked was, give an example. Give us an agenda, give us a list of dates and agendas where the board reviewed in that, going back to 2005. Versus saying, we have not been able to ascertain any record, agenda or otherwise, as required by open meeting laws since 2007. is our finding correct? Yes or no? What we wanted to get was, here's what we have, and then test it. The information we have now, it is what it is, as we've been saying in the office, and there's going to be a lot to write up. There's resumes missing for certain positions that are held. There's employment applications missing. Notwithstanding a representation made that the Board of Assessment Review had met prior to the former assessor, or I should say the assessor that's on administrative leave, and they've been meeting since the assessor left. We challenged that information, improved, and it's going to be in the report, that information was erroneous. The Board of Assessment Review did not meet. And if they did meet, then we have an issue with open meeting laws, which is a violation of state law, and it's a matter for the Attorney General. But our hunch is they did not meet. I don't think we'd be in this problem today if they had met.
Next question. You made mention that the town council, well, you were provided a document that was entered into the record for the town council where the analysis based upon the town council minutes that the average abatements from 2005 through 2013 approximated 100,000. It sounded like your testimony earlier tonight concurs that is all that came in front of the council was the average of 100,000. Therefore, you then mentioned that in reality the abatements were 322,000 on average.
Correct.
For the last, from 2005 to 13. Is it correct to, well, obviously that didn't make it to the council, so whoever produced or approved those 222,000 additional, on average, abatements each year were acting outside of the scope of their authority? Is that whoever did that, or why ever they did that?
In my opinion, yes.
Okay. Is part of the reason that happened was because the tax roll was not locked down and the fact that we never booked tax receivables? Otherwise, it would have popped out as some anomaly within that process?
The answer, I'll take the failure to book accounts receivable. It would have been easier for your finance director to ascertain the true collectability of taxes on a more regular basis. One of our recommendations going forward will be that the finance director provides financial statements to the town council on a monthly basis, and that balance sheet include accounts receivable. An analysis of where we are with collection for doubtful accounts. I think on average, the town's collection rate is abysmal compared to other jurisdictions.
Also, just to reiterate, or just to make clear, the tax assessor who's currently on paid administrative leave has not certified the tax roll for this year, 2014, 2015?
That's correct. I was certified by then consulting counsel.
Okay. Who certified the year before, the year in which this $750,000 you came to light?
That would be the prior assessor, Chris Belair. Chris Belair, Timmy Boss was hired on or about March of 2013. Chris Belair did not leave the town until July, after the roll was certified. So you had two tax assessors, if you will, in the office. Now, this finger point going back and forth. At the end of the day, the person who puts their signature on that roll, who certifies it, is responsible for that roll. And it wasn't Timmy Boss.
Having said that, you also gave testimony earlier that besides the $750,000 $1,000 issue, which is a net of $649. We're working on $174 for the current year. And we don't know where the end is in sight.
May I interrupt?
Yep.
You get 10, 14, so you guys make a motion.
Motion to extend for 15 minutes.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Yazbek, second by Councilor Zawinski. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Yazbek?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Clarity?
No. Motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Why, you don't want to go forward?
I didn't extend for, I didn't need to read 15 more minutes.
Can
I don't, we're not going to get very far this evening with no report. I would rather take this up and we have a report that we can have reviewed in advance and then discuss with Mr. Nicholson. I mean, we've had almost 45 minutes.
Mr. Clarity, the studies on the Historic District, can we just continue that because it was advertised?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to continue,
Well, I think as soon as he says no, we're done. That's Robert's rules of order.
We have to re-advertise. We have to re-advertise. The historic district.